Hello everyone, welcome to Calculator Review Day. We are going to go over how to find mean, median, mode, range, all of that jazz with the calculator emulator. We went over before, but you guys did not have that calculator downloaded, so I want to go ahead and go over that again so I can show you how to do it. Also, today I'm going to talk about without an outlier, so I have some just basic data points here, and then we're going to add an outlier and see how it changes each of these things. And I'm going to show you how to do that on the calculator. Also, I'm going to go ahead and review how to do a box and whisker plot both times. All right, so let's go ahead and jump on over to the calculator. So first things first, I have a clear calculator, so RAM cleared. I'm going to go to Stat, and I want to edit, so I'm just going to press Enter. And I'm going to go ahead and type in these data points. Again, you can use your computer keyboard or whatever, so 7, press Enter, 8, 8, okay, I see right here that if I scroll back up, there are 10 entries, so I can kind of double check if I go down here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's kind of one way to double check that you've typed the right number of things in. Also, just double checking my work here, we got this thing. Okay, I am going to go ahead and show you how to make a box and whisker plot as well, but let's go ahead and just do our stats stuff first. So I'm going to go ahead and go over to Stat. I want to go to Calculate, so I'm going to press the over arrow. Calculate, and we're just going to do one var stats. So yesterday you should have reviewed how to do linear regression, quadratic regression, and xbreg, which is number 0. Today we're just doing one var stats, and we know it's one var stats because when we look at our data list, it only has one variable. We're just listing numbers. We're not comparing two pieces of data, age and height. We're comparing just age, and that's it. So one var stats. I'm going to go to Stat, I'm going to go over to Edit, to Calc, one var stats. Okay, and you literally just press Enter. It's already going to have L1 listed for you. Press Enter, press Enter, press Enter, and that's it. Pretty easy stuff. All right, so this X bar is our mean. So I'm going to go for mean and put 13.3. Okay, then going down, I want to find this SX. That's my standard deviation. So 4.45 is my standard deviation. All right, my median is, I've got to go down, so I'm going to press the down arrow key. I'm actually just going to go ahead and press it all the way down. So I have my min, Q1, median, Q3, and max. My median is 15. I'm not going to zoom the screen up. I'm just going to write 15 here. All right, to find the range, I have to find the maximum minus the minimum. So my max is 19, my min is 7. So my range is 19 minus 7, which is 12. My range is 12. Okay, next is the IQR, the interquartile range. Also right here, I just wrote SD, that's standard deviation. So IQR is the interquartile range, and you find that by finding Q3 minus Q1. So 17 minus 8. So over here, 17 minus 8 is going to be 9. Right, and actually the last one is mode, and you cannot find out mode on the calculator. You just have to look at it. So I see I have 2 8s, that could be a mode. Oh, I have 3 15s, and then I have nothing else that repeats. So 15 is my mode. All right, so let's go ahead and do the box and whisker plot before we add our outlier. So you should already have all these points put in for stat if you're following along. So I'm going to go ahead and I want to get this stat plot, so I need to press the blue second key, and then press the stat plot key, so the y equals key. It's going to bring me my stat plots. I want to turn my stat plot on. And you did this when you were doing the linear regression and all that stuff, but I'm going to go ahead and turn the plot on. So I'm going to press Enter. And when you press Enter, it turns the plot on, just like before. But I do need to go ahead. It's already set up naturally for a scatter plot, so I do need to go ahead and turn it into a box and whisker plot. So you need to go down, so press the down arrow key. And it's currently set on a scatter plot. I want the box and whisker plot that does not have the dots. So the dots will put outliers out there for you. We want just the min and the max to show, so just press the over arrow key until you highlight the one that has the connections and not the dots. Okay, I'm just going to press Enter. When you press Enter, naturally it's going to change this list below it. And then that's it. We're just going to press Zoom. We want to graph it, but we got to press Zoom 9 to get the graph to actually fit on our screen. Okay, so looking at this, hopefully you remember from the lessons about box and whisker plots, that 25% of the data is in each section. So 25% of the data is in here, 25% of the data is in here, and 25% of the data is in here, and 25% of the data is in here. So there should be 4 sections of 25% of the data, of course, making up 100% of the data. It does show you that this second section, whatever, the top half of the middle, is more spread out. There's more data points squished together in that third quarter. That's where that 15, 15, 17, 18 section is hanging out. So it just gives you a kind of a good idea of how that spread looks. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and we're going to add an outlier. So I'm just going to go back over here and I'm just going to pick a number. So we'll just say 70. That's definitely going to be an outlier. I'll actually go ahead and prove it's an outlier at the end just to remind you about the outlier formula. But let's go ahead and go back to the calculator. I want to add that 70. So I'm just going to go to Stat and I want to go to Edit. And I already have my list. I'm just going to go down to spot number 11 because we said there was 10 spots earlier. And I'm just going to add 70. Okay, I now have 70. I'm just going to go see what happens. So I'm going to go to Stat. I want to go over to Calc. I want to go to 1 bar stats, press enter, enter, enter. And now I can see how the data changes. So my data from before, my mean was 13.3. My X bar now is 18.5. So I can see that adding that outlier of 70 brought my average way up. So just having one number that's an outlier, kind of like having Bill Gates' salary added to the average American salary, it's going to make this the average much higher than it actually is. Or, for example, if you have students taking a test and everyone's doing rather well and then one kid turned in a blank test or didn't take it, that's going to pull the class average down. The mean will always change every single time. I could have changed this 15 to a 15.1. It would have changed the mean. The mean will always change. It is very fragile. Obviously, the bigger the outlier or the smaller the outlier, it's going to change it more. So the mean changes a lot quickly, but the mean will always change no matter what. Okay, the same can be said for standard deviation. Remember, standard deviation is how spread out the data is. So the data was roughly 4.45 units away from the average or whatever. And that's saying the average is somewhere here and then data points are spreading out. As the mean changes, the standard deviation will always change. So let's go see what happened to that guy. All right, SX is now 17.61. Okay, so going back over here, 17.61. So looking at our average, it's now 18.5. Well, adding that outlier spread the data out way more. So in order to get from the average of 18.85 to get to 70, it's going to have to take bigger steps to get there. So the standard deviation is basically the size of the steps to get from one point to the next on average. And there's obviously a lot more to it. You just have to know that it always changes. If the mean changes, which it always does, the standard deviation will always change. So these two together are linked. Mean and standard deviation go together all the time, and they always change. Okay, the median may or may not change based on how the points lie. So let me scroll down here to see what happened. Oh, the median stayed 15. And that's because, let's look at our data here. Before, when we had 10 data points, the median was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The median was the average of these 2 points. Adding a 70 now gives me 11 points. The median is 15. I could add even another point and it would still be a median 15. So the number of points you have really determines what your median is. So the median may or may not change. It just depends on how those numbers behave in the middle. If I didn't have numbers repeated, then it would have changed. So the median can or cannot change just depending on obviously what number, how the numbers behave. All right, the range, if you're adding an outlier, the range should always change because by definition, an outlier lies outside of the data, so it should be a max or a min as soon as you add it to the data. So our max now is 70, our min now is 7, so our range is 70 minus 7, which is 63. Our range definitely changed a lot, and that's just because we added a really huge number. If I had added a 20, it would have only changed by 1, and my range would have been 13. So it just depends on the number you add, but the range, if you are adding an outlier, it should always change. The interquartile range, just like your median, it could or could not change. Just depends on how the numbers lie. So again, let's go look real quick. So Q3 is 18 and Q1 is 8. So it didn't change by a lot, 18 and 8. So 18 minus 8. My interquartile range is now 10. So it only changed by one number, not really that big of a deal, but it did change a little bit. And then the mode should not change if you're adding an outlier. If you're adding an outlier, it should be a number outside the data, which means it shouldn't be repeated more than once. So the mode should not change. And most often the mode does not change. Obviously you could add pieces of data that are not outliers, but if I'm talking specifically about outliers, then yeah, it should change. All right, let's go ahead and really quickly prove why 70 is an outlier. Oh, actually, before I do that, let's go ahead and do our box and whisker plot. So I already have my data plugged in. I'm just going to go ahead. I already have the stat plot on. If I press second stat plot, it's already on. It's already set up for box and whisker. So all I got to do is press zoom 9. And I can see this definitely changed. So these little boxes are now, this little line here, or whisker, is super tiny and this one is super huge. So I could definitely just visually see that there's probably an outlier here. This data is very spread out. This data is very close together. This data is very close together. So visually you can pretty clearly see that 70 is an outlier. Also, you can press the trace key on your calculator and you can press the over arrow and see those points. So I can see the max is 70, press the over arrow, Q3 is 18, median is 15, Q1, and minimum. So you can just press the trace key and just scroll around. All right, so real quick, I'm going to prove why 70 is an outlier. So the formula is 1.5 times the IQR, and you're either going to add that or subtract that from whichever one you're trying to get to. So if I'm trying to find an upper outlier, I'm going to add it to Q3. If I'm trying to find a lower outlier, I'm going to subtract it from Q1. So I'm trying to prove 70 is an upper outlier, so I'm going to add that to Q3. All right, so 1.5, interquartile range we just said was 10, plus, and then Q3, well, I got to go back and see that guy again, so I'm going to go back over here. Oh, no, I have it on my screen here. Q3 is 18. I have it right there. Okay, so let's go do the math here. 1.5 times 10. So I'm going to go back to the calculator. I'm just going to press second quit, and I'm going to say 1.5 times 10, and then plus 18. Let's do this on the computer there. All right, 33. So 33. That means anything greater than 33, so if it's any number greater than 33, it is going to be an outlier. And obviously 70 is far greater than 33, so 70 is definitely an outlier. So again, that formula is 1.5 IQR plus Q3, or it could have been Q1 minus 1.5 IQR. Whichever direction you're trying to go, trying to either find an upper bound or a lower bound. The number is 33, so it's got to be a number greater than 33, and 70 is greater. All right, so we've gone over mean, median, mode, all that stuff, box and whisker plot. I think we've covered everything, so I think you guys are good to go. You will have some practice problems in a Canvas quiz, so good luck with that. All right, see ya.